So there's some debate on the internet as to whether the DJI Flip is kind of a souped up Neo or more of a rundown Mini 4 Pro. The reality is that it's kind of both, giving the Flip a bit of an identity crisis. Now, whether that will hurt the branding, I'm not sure, but I hope it doesn't, because the Flip is actually a fantastic drone. Now, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and there are some issues that I have with it, which I'll talk about in this video. Now, I do want to stress that I did purchase this myself, so this DJI Flip video has not been sponsored by DJI themselves. So the fact this is coming in at under half the cost of the Mini 4 Pro is going to be a fantastic way of bringing the drone hobby to more people, especially because the Flip being a DJI drone means it does have that DJI quality. So the actual flight here is really smooth. I find it holds position with the GPS lock fantastically well, and the features that DJI have included here, again for that price point, are actually really impressive. So we're going to go ahead and unbox this, and just to clarify, I purchased my Flip with the RC N3 controller, and that's because I already have the RC2 controller that came bundled with my Mini 4 Pro. So didn't need another one of those. And straight away we get the Flip itself, which I've never held in my hands before. So this is probably the most, or one of the most unique drones at least, that I've ever purchased from DJI. I said that sentence just as I remembered the Avata 2, which was my first FPV drone, but this is unique in a very different way. Of course, we have our documentation here, and then inside the accessory pack, we get a bunch of replacement props, although hopefully these won't actually be needed all that regularly, since we do have the prop guards here. And we get the controller itself, of course. And even though this is DJI's basic controller, so you'll need to put a phone device up here in order to use the app, it has been fully upgraded, the N3, that's the model of this, so that it supports OcuSync 4. And then finally, we get the required cables, including a charging cable, and little mini screwdriver for replacing the props when need be. So just some basic stats to get started. First off, the Flip is able to fly at a maximum horizontal speed, so that's in sports mode at 12 meters per second, and for those of you that don't do that language, that works out about 27 miles per hour. And the drone itself does come under 250 grams, meaning that in Europe it's classified as class 0, and in most places around the world, including the US, you are going to be able to fly the Flip with the fewest restrictions. And speaking of the US, because we have the prop guards here, the FAA will allow you to fly the Flip over uninvolved people. The max rated distance by DJI is 14 kilometers, although with the various laws that equates to about 13 kilometers in the US and 8 kilometers in Europe. But one of the things I like about the Flip over the Neo, because it's slightly larger in terms of its footprint, if you are line of sight flying, which is perhaps what most of you are going to be doing, then you can actually see this for further as it flies in the sky. And before we get into the specs of the camera, I do want to stress that somewhere that perhaps DJI have gone backwards a little bit here, unfortunately, is with the internal storage. In fact, the Neo had 22 gigabytes of internal storage, which for perhaps the most budget drone that DJI have ever released was a really nice, impressive thing, and I was hoping that that is what we was going to see going forward. Unfortunately, we've only got 2 gigabytes of internal storage here. You might be able to capture about 5 minutes of 4K footage if you record on that 2 gigabyte storage, but you are really going to need an SD card. I would have liked to have seen at least 8 gigabytes, if not more. Again, I get this is a budget model, but the Neo could do it, and that was even cheaper. So yeah, 2 gigabytes just seems like we have gone backwards a touch, which is a shame. However, where this has improved over the Neo is definitely in the camera and the gimbal. We now have a full 3-axis gimbal, which means we are going to be getting super stable DJI quality footage, especially when you take on board the increased sensor size. We have a nice 1/1.3 inch sensor here, so you can see here I captured some video inside my home. We only had a lamp on, this was at night time, so it was really low light here, and yet there's not much artifacting or noise in this video at all. I think the Flip actually does a great job. Again, because of that larger sensor size, the Flip can take photos up to 48 megapixels in size, and in terms of video, you can record at up to 4K 60 frames per second, or if you choose the slow motion option, you can technically record 4K 100 frames per second. So very capable camera here in the Flip. The one downside, especially compared to the Mini 4 Pro, is the fact that there is no true vertical recording here. You can record vertical video, but it's really just the horizontal video being trimmed down, cropped down into vertical shape, which means you cannot get full 4K vertical. You can only get 2.7K. And another area where the Flip does improve upon the Neo, but you can definitely tell it's not a Mini 4 Pro, is with the obstacle avoidance. So there are only two obstacle avoidance directions here, which are downward and forwards. Now, again, for a budget model, that's not terrible. And the forwards obstacle avoidance does use the new 3D infrared sensing technology, which I've got to say does a fantastic job, and it has a 60-degree field of view. You can actually fly this directly using your mobile phone with the Fly app, no other controller needed, and that, I'm going to be honest with you, is not something I'm used to. I did give it a go, and it's a nice feature to have, and if you guys want to practice with that and get good with that, it's going to be a lot more convenient than pulling out the entire DJI controller and having to either connect that to your phone or even carry it with you if it's the screen controller. But the other thing you can do is not use a controller or phone at all. Just like with the Neo, you can use your palm for the drone to take off from, and then it will detect your palm for landing, and you can set the modes with the button on the side of the controller, which will then allow you to select the shot you want the drone to capture.
Droney, circle, rocket, spotlight, direction track, follow, 3, 2, 1.
So you can just turn the drone on, capture your shot, have it land back on your hand, and you never even have to open the Fly app at all. So that's something that the Neo could do, and I love that feature, and I love it here too. With the Flip, it works exactly the same way. The only downside is, another negative, you need to be careful because the Flip itself does have these propeller guards. Okay, but you can easily get your fingers through the gaps here, and they are so close to propellers to the bottom of the guards here that even when it is on your palm, you can easily, without realizing, like get a finger slip through or something, and yeah, that's gonna hurt. So be really careful that you have your hand either as flat as possible or support the drone by another means when you are doing palm takeoffs and landings. But again, it comes back to who is the DJI Flip for? It's not going to be for the hardcore drone community, I wouldn't say, because it is still more of a budget drone. But then again, it is a step up from those really casual hobbyists that have enjoyed using the Neo, but probably didn't want to spend much more than the Neo actually cost them. However, the Flip does bring those extra features with it. So again, hopefully it's not going to have an identity crisis and suffer for that, because the technology here is absolutely fantastic. It's a shame as well about those couple of niggles that I mentioned, the distinct lack of internal storage size. 2 gigabytes just seems like a very weird and almost pointless amount. The fact that if you're not paying attention, you could easily get your fingers caught seems like a bit of an overlooked design decision. I like the idea of how this folds up. Okay, and it's obviously really portable. I know some people have said it looks ugly, but I actually really like the design. It's definitely unique, I'll give it that. Yeah, I'm worried about these connections here as you constantly open these up. Okay, I'm not sure how strong they are going to be over time, because they do just feel a little bit flimsy, if I'm honest. But the drone's only been out for a day or so it'd be interesting to see if that is a problem going forward over the coming months and years. But overall, I think the DJI Flip is definitely an interesting drone to be added into DJI's lineup. I don't think it's going to be for everybody, but still, it's a really fun drone to fly. So I've come back outside with it now, going to get it set up, take it for its next flight, and I'm sure I'll have a blast doing so. Catch you in the next one.